Okay, hi everyone. I'm Allison, Tots on Target. I'm gonna just be waiting for Kaylee from the Movement Mama to join me over here. Okay, I see she joins. There we go, I see you, Kaylee, and now we just gotta add her in. There we go, yep. Okay, we're just gonna wait for this connection to be made. Really excited to be, there we go.
Hey,
Hi, Kaylee. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be chatting with you.
I know. I feel like this is long overdue, so I'm excited.
So long overdue, and I feel like this community on Instagram, I've learned so much from other therapists on this platform. It has made me such a better clinician from watching you, from watching several others, and it's just nice to see that, and then also spend the time coming together to talk about like great fun stuff like crawling.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like thinking I have learned so much from you girls that I don't know what I'm going to contribute, but it'll be good to just chat. And yeah, I agree. I used to use Pinterest so much for like my early days as a peds therapist, and now I'm so thankful that it's just like right where I'm at. I don't have to
Yeah.
go over to Pinterest all the time and be,
It's
you know,
so funny you say Pinterest because I was just told that Pinterest is a really good platform. I've never been on Pinterest, so I think I really need to check it out. But
yeah.
my spare time, I'll get that done.
Yeah, it is nice, I guess, because you can search things.
Right.
So that's nice. That was my like, in grad school, whenever I was looking for things for my clinical rotation for peds,
Mm,
I would search like gross motor activities for
oh,
kids,
interesting.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
so fun
I
to
feel
be
like I'm
here.
aging myself. I'm not even sure Pinterest was around when I was in grad school. I'm not sure. I feel really
Oh
old.
my gosh,
I
it
don't
had to
know.
have been. Maybe you just weren't as
And
internet
maybe it
savvy as I
was.
was.
Definitely Instagram was not. Facebook was, but Instagram was not.
Yeah.
So I feel like, but I do feel now, and I think it's really, we're going to get into all the discussions about crawling and everything like that. But I do feel so fortunate for everybody who is on this platform to be able to learn from whether it's PTs, OTs, nutritionists. It's such here Pinterest, and I'm sure TikTok's going to become that also.
Yep.
Again, when I was in grad school, certainly when I was starting as a new mom and I was not on Pinterest, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. And I think having a resource like what this platform has become is really important for so many parents out there. And we'll dive right into the crawling thing because I think that's one of the things that I found so ignites a fire, when we talk about this on whether it's in reels or on stories or different areas, when we talk about crawling being such an important milestone, and we're going to say that because we're PTs, so we can still say that
Yep.
crawling's a milestone.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about crawling, then we talk about atypical crawling patterns and the long lasting benefits of crawling. And then we do get those comments from either it's from certain people in different professions that say no, crawling's not a milestone, or from a lot of parents who unfortunately say that they went to their pediatrician and made comments like my baby's not crawling, my baby's atypically crawling, and they might not use the word atypically crawling, but I am. And the pediatrician might say, don't worry, it's not a problem. As long as baby can get from point A to point B, which was my recent reel that I shared, don't worry about it. And I don't know if you've seen this as much in your practice or you've heard this from parents, but I know I certainly have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the hard thing is we see them at such a more intensive level. And I think I'm having to come into this conversation acknowledging that, sure, we see the kids that need help, right? And so we are seeing like maybe things that wouldn't have been caught until later on, or where it would have been like a scratch on the chin when they're in elementary school, like, why are they having a problem with this? Whereas maybe if we catch them in early intervention, we can say, oh, they didn't crawl. We really need to be working on some of these skills through therapy, and kind of, I always say we dial it back and we still make that really important until we've achieved that foundation, even if they're running, walking, jumping, whatever.
Right.
And yeah, it's just really interesting because there is a disconnect between the time that pediatricians specifically can spend with their patients. It's no fault of their own. It's just not possible for them to watch the baby move around.
Right.
I
I
did.
said, how many pediatricians ask you to put your baby on their dirty floor? They don't, they're not going to do that
Right.
because they're wonderful pediatricians. They're mostly concerned about weight, height, rashes, right? Like different diaper rashes. They are so trained to do so many things. This is not a knock on pediatricians at all, right? And
Yeah.
I know you agree with that. It's not. I mean, I value my pediatricians. I have friends who are pediatricians, family members.
Yeah.
I think that the amount of knowledge that they have is tremendous.
Yeah.
But then we take a step back and we say, right, but we're the professionals in the motor development.
Yeah.
We're that next step that understands the years later of what certain milestones and certain skills have that long lasting effect on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's where I feel like I said, there's this disconnect. It's like we all want what's best for the kiddos, but if the research that they're reading for whatever reason says it's not a milestone, and then we're saying, okay, that's fine if you want to think that, but then we also need you to understand that there's all these repercussions potentially that could happen. Why not promote it? It can't hurt to promote it. And just be educating parents that, hey, this is important and it's not something to stress about, but we want to try to work on this as much as we can. And then I would just encourage anyone listening too, that like, that is what we do in our practice is if we see problems, we dial it back and we.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You should get a 1% or tattoo.
Totally. I think that, you know, there's also these two different things, which is one is whether a baby skips crawling altogether, right? And I know, you know, in the PT world, we're never going to say if a baby already starts walking, we can't make them go back to crawling, right? We can't say like, you know, the baby's already walking, you need to go and, you know, no walking, you have to crawl. That's not what we're going to make them do, but we are going to find other ways to incorporate that upper body strengthening or other things. But then there's this whole other piece to it, which is when, you know, babies are motivated to move. And if they can't walk just yet, because most babies are not walking at 10, 11 months, they're going to try to find a way to move. And if they're not motivated to move, that's a whole separate issue. But if they are motivated to move, as they should be, and they're not yet walking, this is where we often now are finding all these different atypical patterns of crawling. And we're seeing, right, like that very fast army crawling, not just that initial, you know, learning how to motor plan, but really that efficient army crawl, that like inchworm crawl where they're, you know, kind of going like this. And then there's that, you know, hitch crawling, 3-point crawling where, you know, we see that one leg up and, you know, using the arms and one leg up and, you know, one knee down. And we're seeing all these other atypical patterns. And again, that's where you and I would really see these kids. But that's also when we say, you know, the pediatricians, we would love them to be able to note and say, hey, you know, something just looks off. Or if the parent notes that, saying, you know what, you're right, that's not typical. Why don't you go check that out? Because at least I've always seen this. There's always a reason that babies are doing this. There's always a reason that a baby is not 4-point crawling, because that is the most efficient way to move. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that's like, how can we combat that? I don't know. That's so interesting talking about the dirty pediatrician's floor. You know, what can we be doing? I'd love to see developmental therapists in the pediatrician's office, but that's a long ways off before that change gets made. But yeah, exactly.
I know. I would, in my head, I would love the idea of like, you know, you go to the dentist once a year for a checkup, like you go to the therapy clinic once a year to like, you know, or once every 6 months to make sure everything's on track, or you have somewhere to go to check in if something's, you know, off. I think so many parents feel like calling, you know, going to therapy is like a real, you know, commitment. There has to be something really wrong to go for PT, OT, speech, you know, whatever those extra disciplines are. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish it didn't feel like in early intervention, you have to be so delayed in order to qualify. Like, I just feel like the whole system, I mean, I know we're talking about a much bigger picture problem here, but, you know, that's why want to do more consults, because I think that if parents just had a place to go and check in and say, hey, is everything okay? Or are these certain things that I'm seeing, is that really something that means something else, And how are they supposed to know?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said earlier, there's always an underlying cause, but that underlying cause doesn't have to be really sinister. Sometimes it's just
Correct.
maybe they were really cramped in mommy's tummy, and so they have one side that's really tight and restricted, and we need to work into that restriction and get them a little bit more symmetrical. So it's like it snowballs. So first they're, paying more attention to one side because the other side is tight and weak, and then that means they only roll over that side. So then they start doing like the hitch crawl or army crawling with just one side, whatever it may be. And so it doesn't have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be this big thing like there's something wrong
Right.
with your child. It can just be, hey, we have the tools to gently support your baby's development becoming more symmetrical. And I just saw somebody posted something, but now I can't scroll up on it. Okay.
Oh, did we get a
Okay.
question?
So somebody said, I think parents also feel like they've failed if their child needs those therapies.
That's a really good point.
I think that's so hard. It's so hard not to feel that way whenever our child needs support. But that's what it is, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
can't all be good at everything.
I really wish that we thought of it more like just going to the dentist.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? My kid had a few cavities, and the dentist said, like, I mean, yeah, maybe you could floss a little bit more, but like nothing, like you didn't do anything wrong, like there's nothing wrong. We had to go to the dentist and we had to get those cavities filled, and that was it, and it's over. I wish that parents felt a little bit more like it was more of a routine thing that parents could go and check in. Is everything okay? Is everything going right? Let's go for a few sessions and see where we're at. There are so many babies that I've seen where a parent will come, bring their baby in, especially for the consult, and I see something that's not exactly right, or something's a little off. Maybe it's even a motor planning issue. The baby just doesn't know how to do that. And once you sometimes give the parents the tools and show baby what's actually supposed to be done, all of a sudden they can actually do those things. I'm just scrolling through to make sure that if anybody else has any questions, feel free to add them in. That's totally fine. I feel like it would be so nice if parents did feel like that. And again, if pediatricians were more comfortable referring out, I know that there's always this balance of you don't want to alarm parents and you don't want to make them feel like they have to like run to every specialist and every therapy for everything that comes up, for sure. But for some reason, I don't know why, like crawling has gotten our panties in a bunch. Is that like a phrase that people use still? I don't know. I feel like for the therapist, we feel so strongly that this is so important and it has such long lasting effects into school age. This is really the last time that we are weight bearing through our arms. That's the only time that we are really using these shoulder muscles in a weight bearing position. I know Mary would say she wasn't able to come tonight, but opening those hands, really developing the arches of the hand, wrist extension, there's so much there that is precursor to drawing, coloring, writing. All that is happening with crawling. And for some reason, our professions are such advocates for crawling. And for some reason, it feels like that ball was just dropped on the medical side. I'm not sure why, because it's not like this with other areas. It's not like if a baby's not rolling, pediatricians are like, forget it, not rolling. I mean, maybe they do. It just doesn't seem like it's as big of a deal for those other milestones. And crawling, for some reason, just seems to be this, we feel so strongly about it. And then on the flip side, it's like, it's fine. Baby will walk eventually. Don't worry about it. But I think that the more we spend time educating parents, and for all of you who are here joining the live, I think that that's so wonderful and helpful to just arm yourself with that information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I still am trying to dig into that research and understand it all. The brief explanation I saw was basically that they wanted to cut down the number of markers that the pediatrician and parents were walking through. But again, on our side, we're thinking, but why was crawling one of them that was taken off? Like of all things, yeah, it's just fascinating to me. And I feel like two, you know, as our profession, we're still fighting this very impairment-based model. So meaning like something has to be wrong in order to receive services, which is, you know, part of why we have difficulty getting direct access, especially to see kids. I feel like adults more and more are referring direct access, but
in your state, are you direct access? Where are you? I forgot where you are.
I'm in Kansas,
In
and
Kansas.
I believe we are, but again, I was in peds. I am in peds, so I
Yeah.
always had a referral, the clinic that I worked at, and then I was in early intervention. But oh, where I was going with that, I remember.
Sorry, that was me. That was my
No,
bad.
you're good. Before you even said anything, I was like, and where was I going?
Right.
But I am really trying to, like, on my account, educate from a wellness perspective. Like, hey, let's equip ourselves with knowledge. We aren't having these books anymore. We also know so much more about development now than we did before. So, you know, I'm really trying to educate in that realm of it doesn't have to mean anything is wrong with your baby. And it is good if you feel like you want the strategies and tools to reach out to a therapist and do more of a wellness thing. Like, hey, I want for the first year of my baby's life for somebody to walk me through every few months what this looks like, because I don't know. And parents aren't expected to know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. I actually saw one of the comments on one, I think it was the reel that I posted about crawling. Um, a mom posted, and I felt it hurt, saying something like, you know, we parents already have enough things to worry about, you know, this just makes me feel worse and something else that I have to like focus on and worry about. And you know, that's never our intention. Is, you know, when we're sharing information about development, obviously everybody out there can take the information, make it their own, do what they want with it. But you know, I think our goals are the same as yours, which is to give parents the information, give parents the tools, and sometimes even the language. You know, you go to a pediatrician appointment, and or you're reading an article somewhere, and it's all these clinical terms and all these different things, and it's hard to decipher what's legitimate, what's real, what can I ignore, what should I be taking seriously. And I think that, you know, all of us, these accounts that we've created a platform of wellness. I think it's really just to give parents the tools and the knowledge. We're not, you know, we certainly don't want to make any parent feel bad if their baby is not crawling, or, you know, making you feel like you're doing the wrong thing. Certainly not. And you're the parent. You can always choose to do what you feel is best with your child. But if we as the professionals aren't allowed, I say that, you know, gently, to share the information that we think is important for parents to know, then how are all of you supposed to take that information, like figure out what's good for you? You know,
Yeah.
if we're scared to share the information, that's very difficult. We want to create a space where this is information to empower you as a parent to know what's going on, to ask the right questions, and to figure out what makes sense for your baby.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of thoughts. One is based on a comment that someone made. And then I'll remember the other one in just a second. Because I like these things are streaming through. So I'm like, okay, I got to answer that. So someone said something about like the pediatrician wasn't concerned and they were wishing these services were more easily accessible. And the thing I would say to that is I've experienced this as a mom too. Took my daughter to the pediatrician and had a concern about something not about PT related, but it was just kind of pushed off. And I think what the pediatricians want is for us to leave and trust them and go home and be like, okay, the pediatrician said it's fine, so it's fine. But if our mom gut is still, you know, just like gnawing at us, we need to remember and understand that, again, it doesn't have to mean that something is definitively wrong. We can then say, you know what? I don't know. Even if nothing is wrong, I'm feeling just a little bit concerned and I'm wanting support. Would you be willing to send me, like, refer me for an evaluation? And the thing parents also need to remember is if the parent then advocates and asks for that, knowing that the pediatrician may disagree and the pediatrician says no, then maybe you need to find somebody who is more in line with supporting and advocating for you regardless of what they say. Now, on the other side, early intervention services in many states are free or very low cost, and your child does not have to qualify to have an evaluation.
Right.
So I think that that's something that is like a little bit hairy for people, is they're like, well, what if my baby doesn't qualify? Well, they may not qualify, but if they're a good clinician that does the evaluation, they will still leave that visit with strategies to give you, like, hey, I know you're concerned about this. They're not far enough behind to qualify for services, but here's X, Y, and Z things that you can do
Correct.
to help move that ball forward. And then the other thing I remembered I was going to say is I think I have to remember my mindset towards, so for example, my trigger was these beautiful play-based accounts. So like these elaborate play setups and stuff. And I would think to myself, oh my gosh, how do they do this every day? Well, they don't. Their wheelhouse is those beautiful play setups. So that doesn't mean that that's what's expected of you as a parent, is every day, all day, you have to have these beautiful play setups, but their content is going to be over and over again, those kinds of things. And so same with us. I wish I could tell every parent, like, you're not expected to do all of this all the time. It is absolutely about, like, if you need some tools or you need some support with this milestone or that milestone, here's some strategies, but these are our clinical skills that you're not expected to know as a parent.
Correct. I think that's a very, very good point. Is, for us, it's always this balance of sharing tips, like, creating reels with like the visuals and how-tos, but then it's also, how to implement that, when to implement that, how do you adjust it mildly for each baby. That's where our skills come in. That's why we do what we do, and we went to graduate school to do that. But for parents at home, some of these tips, again, some of them are very easy to implement, that you try them and you're like, hey, my baby couldn't do that, or I really struggled with that. Maybe I do need to, consult with someone. And I think, your point about early intervention, so good, is that it's free. Certainly in the US, it is free for an eval, and you can get it free every 3 months. So, you can call. Now, again, if everything's fine and dandy and there's no problem, no need to make yourself nuts and just scheduling those appointments. But if there is something in your mom gut that says, hey, or your dad gut that says, hey, something's not right, make that call. It can't hurt, and it costs nothing. It's always better to have the information and have a few, opinions. On a different, it was a different, not PT related, but my middle son was, when he was a baby, he had colds constantly, terrible colds. And I had mentioned it to my pediatrician a bunch of times. He was a very heavy mouth breather also, very heavy mouth breather. I said, I don't know. It's like, do you think he needs his adenoids out? Should I check with that? No. She said, is he sleeping well at night? I said, yes, I think so. No, don't even bother, right? And it was actually my husband who said to me, like that dad gut, I guess. I don't know. He's like, I don't know. I think we should just go to an ENT. So we went to an ENT, and the ENT also said, he's like, it's not one of those like clear cut, the kid's not sleeping, like sleep apnea, you have to get them out. He's like, but it could make a very big difference. So we went and got the adenoids out, and it literally changed this child's life. Wow. Like complete change he was sick all the time, completely stopped. And it just changed so much for him. And I still love that pediatrician, because it wasn't one of those like clear, like, yes, baby's not sleeping because up all night because can't breathe, go get the adenoids out. That's that clear medical case. This was a little bit more nuanced, but ultimately, we made the decision, and it was the best thing for him. So I think that, it's always okay to go and check in with a professional. We're always happy to see those one-off cases. So it was so nice to like have this conversation. I think, having somebody else to talk it out with, and for parents to just hear that we're open to talking to parents and helping them through even just minor things. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but it could just be something like, hey, does this look right? And sometimes parents come to me. I had one today, and I said, everything looks just fine. Everything's great. I gave a few tips of things that could be worked on, because there's always things that we could say to work on. But I was like, everything really looks wonderful. And we're not looking for problems. We're not gonna, you're not gonna bring somebody to us and I'm gonna say, definitely, I need to see your baby for 6 months, no matter what the issue is. We want you to not want us. or not, we want you to not need us, I should say. And so if you, if we, just our goal is to arm our parents with information. I really think that that's the most important thing. And that's why we created our course, Babies on the Move, was really just so that parents have more information about child development through that first year.
Yeah, I love that. And the last thing, I don't know if you're wanting to wrap, but several people were asking.
Oh, I could go on for hours.
I know, I could too. Several people were asking about atypical crawling patterns, and I don't know how in depth you want to get, but the one thing I'll say is usually in my experience, as a very generalized way without us going into each atypical pattern and what we're addressing, because it's so nuanced with each baby. In general, it's related to muscle restriction, musculoskeletal restriction, or weakness. And
Nailed it.
so that's really, I know that's like really umbrella over all the things, but again, it doesn't have to mean that they're going to be weak for the rest of their life or that they're going to be restricted for the rest of their life. But weird things happen in your belly, they get so tight up in there, and their intrinsic motivation is so important as far as movement goes. So I don't know.
Sometimes we have babies who had a lot of gastro problems as, really in infancy. They could not tolerate tummy time because they were so gassy, or they, had reflux. And so sometimes those things, really just ultimately your baby could not tolerate tummy time and now can't extend through those arms properly to get onto all fours. So, and that's fixable. You're 100% correct. It's either that restriction somewhere that's, not allowing baby to get on all fours and go through those motor patterns, or there's weakness. And that could be, I would say, either in the arms or hips or core, but usually the core is linked to, the other areas as well. And those are fixable, very, very fixable. And we can get, I had a baby come to me for that hitched, 3-point crawling. And also really interesting, I saw an unresolved torticollis right away. And the mom also said, everybody told me I was crazy. Nobody believed me that there was something going on.
Yeah.
And she's actually an OT, but I believe she treats adults. So she's like, I knew that there was something wrong, but nobody really believed me. And I'm like, I promise you're not crazy. I see exactly what you're seeing. Literally the first minute you walked in, I saw. And within a few weeks, I gave mom a few activities to do at home. And within a few weeks, she was 4-point crawling. Yeah. So these are things that are fixable, and with the right tools and the right understanding of what it is that's going on, we got you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give a shameless plug too. I don't know what Babies on the Move goes into as far as crawling, but I have a crawling course as well that is based on this. It's based on those wellness type strategies for trying to get your baby to crawl just normally. And it does address, some of the atypical crawling patterns. So if anyone's on here and needs that specifically, that is linked in my profile. Tell me about Babies on the Move and what.
Yeah, no, I love hearing. And just, do you only have crawling courses, or do you have other courses as well?
I have a rolling one as well. I work from home with my kids, and so I have 10 different courses in my mind. Again, in that mindset of we shouldn't have to feel like we have to teach our babies a skill. That's not my mindset with this. Same with you guys. I'm sure with Babies on the Move, it's more like, how can I equip myself with this solid foundation of information of when I'm looking at my baby and thinking, what am I supposed to be doing with you movement wise? That's where my course, kind of my heart is with that, is I don't ever want parents to feel like they have to teach their baby to move, because they don't.
Babies are born to learn how to do each milestone independently. They should be able to reach all these milestones without intervention. I think that that's so important for parents to remember, because our goal is not to scare them and make them feel like they have to be on the floor handling their babies in a certain way. That's stressful. And I didn't do that with my own babies, by the way. I was too busy to do that. So no, I think that that's amazing that your courses, and again, right, we all have a million ideas of things that we should be producing every single day, right? And I think, and it's so good, because sometimes you want to, go through the specific milestones. And I love that you have that rolling course and crawling. That's what you said, you're rolling and crawling. Sorry, I don't know if you cut out there for a second.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. You have
Sorry,
the rolling course. Oh, no, totally fine. You have the rolling course and the crawling course, you said, right?
yes.
Those are the excellent. Our course, Babies on the Move, covers 0 to 12 months. And we also go through, really, it's a lot of information based, like when is each milestone supposed to be reached? Also, how to set up your play area for different things, how to use different play positions throughout those 12 months. And again, simple tips to help you reach each milestone, because exactly as you said, you don't need to teach your baby how to roll. It really should come naturally. Sometimes we need to give them a little bit of a push, or we're looking to motivate them ourselves because we want that for them, or we see that they're frustrated because they want to be moving. But a lot of it is, you know, really just how to set up your play space, a little bit of handling techniques, very, very mild. And in Babies on the Move, we also include activity guides. You know, so many parents want to know, what do I do with my baby when he or she is awake, you know, during those awake windows? I'm supposed to be doing something with them. Mm-hmm. So we actually just recently created an activity guide by month, you know, like the newborn to 1 month, 2 to 3 months, 4 to 6 months, and so on, of activities that you can do with your baby. We also have in there 2 developmental checklists. One is like month by month, what you should expect at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And then the other one, which I think is really important, is the gross, like the development of each skill and what you should see within that skill. So like rolling, what are the precursors? You know, when people come and say, my baby's not crawling. Okay, well, you could say your baby's not crawling altogether and is just a lump and just sitting there. Or your baby is getting on all fours, rocking, downward dogging. Like there's this progression that happens. So our other developmental checklist is actually shows also some of the progression of the skills. So you know if your baby's on track for those skills.
Yeah, I love that. That's incredible. That's so good to know, to refer people to, because you know, that's an invaluable resource. And a lot of, I think, probably what you and I and Mary are coming from is this vantage point of, there are those kids who don't necessarily need intervention, but they need something, right? Like they don't need this skill, like you were saying, they're really nuanced, but maybe they're just not quite getting there on their own, and parents need something. They don't qualify for early intervention, not quite enough of a delay to justify telling a parent like, yeah, you should go and pay for these several visits if it's a financial burden. It's kind of filling that gap, and again, that wellness mindset.
I've also heard from many parents who are in more rural areas that can't access a therapist, or in some states like mine, I've heard, you know, in New Jersey that that a ton of like EI is backed up. They can't find therapists for all the kids, you know, in EI. So, you know, whatever the reason is, or you're like, you know what, hey, I just want to know a little bit more, like, what could I be doing during this time? Again, these awake windows, I want to be playing with my baby, and how do I make it functional? So I think that, you know, your courses, you know, combined with our courses, with our course, you know, shameless plug for both. But I think that, you know, again, we spend so much on toys. You know, one toy can cost probably more than our courses combined. But it's really useful and valuable information. And another 2 things that we actually included in Babies on the Move. One is actually a toy guide of less is more, like what household items around the house can you use at different ages, or very simple toys. And then another one is also red flags that you want to, you know, if you see that head tilt, if you see, you know, a preference to only one side, these are some of the things that we also noted, because, you know, again, a pediatrician only has a very small window to see your baby in action. A lot of times they're being held, or they're being fed during the you know, during the appointment, or they're crying because, you know, the pediatrician is touching them. And so if you notice a red flag at home, it's something that you can bring to your pediatrician's attention at the next visit.
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought of a random just anecdote about crawling that I wanted to share. You know, after we have our babies, our core is so weak. And I was doing a telehealth session, and I was showing a parent, I got on hands and knees myself, and I was showing them this activity where I was basically encouraging them to have the baby reach from hands and knees to try to encourage 3-point support. So 1 hand down and 2 knees. And as I did this, I was relatively new postpartum. And I just felt the extreme challenge on my core that took. And it really brought home for me personally, like, okay, I already knew this was important, but here I am as an adult and I'm doing what we're asking a baby to do. And I actually can like recruit those muscles actively because I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but a baby doesn't. And just thinking, like you said earlier, forward to school skills, you know, whether it be higher level motor skills like sports or even just sitting with good posture in their desk all day, everything comes back to the core. The core is like the foundation of your body. And so thinking again about that crawling, I challenge every parent on here to get down on your hands and knees and take one arm out and reach forward, like almost like you're going to give somebody a high five.
It's like now you're talking about like a high level Pilates class.
Yeah,
right?
it really is. It really is. And so if you ever need like convincing that it
Right.
works so many muscles, make sure you get clearance from your doctor. Don't do it before 6 weeks. But it really was a good reminder, like, okay, yes, this is so important, and why we are really needing to encourage this among many other things. Do you guys do much with reflex integration? I don't want to get too far on that tangent.
Yeah, we haven't done so much with that. It's a very interesting topic, and I know it could be, people can like eat it up, or it can be very overwhelming. So we haven't done as much on that topic. We do have a reflex page in Babies on the Move just to like help people understand what those reflexes are, but we haven't done a lot of it. Have you done that?
Well, not on my page, and I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I feel like for parents, that's a little bit too far and beyond,
Right.
but it's just interesting to get on people's radars at least. Like there's all these different things that crawling is so crucial
100%.
to.
I think there's any other questions that have come in, because
Yeah, feel free to ask questions, guys. We were just rambling, and we probably missed some.
Yes. I see one. After baby is born, you get so much info on feeding, of course, but you have to seek out all this developments and stuff on your own. And that's a really good point, actually. I didn't even think of that. You're right. Like, how are you supposed to know when your baby's supposed to do all this stuff? You know your baby's supposed to eat, and you get a lot of support for that. But all this other stuff. Oh, and Dr. Otto is on. I don't know if he's still on now, but 100% or 1,000% spot on. So I really appreciate that. And can you explain, I don't know if this is the one that you saw before. Can you explain each atypical crawl means in terms of deficit area? For example, if they inchworm crawl, where should they be targeted if they are crawling with one leg up? Which area is in need? Okay, we will try to do this. Kayla, do you have time for this?
I do, but I worry just because it's so nuanced to each kid.
I'm really
happy for you to go into whatever you want to, and I'll add my 2 cents.
Okay. Sorry, and then as I touched my phone, of course, I'm going to hold it now, because not only did my light turn off in my room, so I'm going to go turn it back on, but because now I feel like sorry guys, I'm just stepping and turning the light on in the dark. I feel like it's, here we go. I'm not sure why my lights turned on, and of course my tripod got messed up, so I'm just going to hold this now. Okay, so what I will say, and again, it is very nuanced, and this is not a therapy session, so because we don't know your kid, but I will say that what I found with inchworm crawling is there are a few things. One is really being able to support through extended arms. That's a really big one, where babies just can't push all the way through their arms, and often they can't really get their hips underneath their trunk, right? Like we have to get them on all fours, and that's really hard for them. So that's something I target in inchworm crawling and army crawling. In that hitched crawling, as we had mentioned before, I think that often has some tightness linked to it. Usually it's either residual from torticollis, a positional preference. There's something tight in there that usually that hitched 3-point crawling is showing us that we need to address. So that's, again, like maybe a little bit more of a general way to say that without being too clinical and not knowing what your baby's doing, but that's, would you agree, Kaylee?
Yeah, I would agree with that. We had a couple questions. I'm going to try to scroll back up, but mine keeps messing up. Something about open heart surgery, how to support crawling. One thing I would just say is anytime we have a very clear and obvious reason that is out of our control, that tummy time did not go well, I just encourage parents to kind of breathe deep and let go of that typical milestone trajectory for a little while. We always want to be shooting for that. That's not us saying like your baby's never going to meet milestones on time, but it's more my thought is, okay, we missed out on tummy time for several weeks because we had a big incision in our chest, or we had horrendous reflux to where you did have to keep your baby upright. You had to keep them happy and content. You are not to fault for that. And so we just need to give ourselves and baby a little bit more grace, I guess is the way I would put it. And so you would do all the same things, but just shift your mindset of, okay, if we're starting tummy time at 12 weeks, I'm not going to look at my baby according to where they should be for a 12-week-old. I'm actually going to have to look at them starting at like week 1, right? Because really they're developing those muscles for the first time. And I think that's so hard. That reframe is so hard for parents, because they think, oh no, they should be doing this. Well, no, they have to build it from the ground up. It's fascinating. I wish there could be a time lapse. I'm sure someone's got one great one somewhere, but a time lapse of that first year, and just, they start out down on the ground all scrunched up, and then they start to elongate and lift and extend, and then come up into 4-point, and then, onto knees and up into standing. But that's what I would encourage you with the open heart surgery question, is just reframe your mindset of where did you start? Where can we expect them to be today? And gradually build up from there.
That is such a good point. I feel like it's so important to remind ourselves, even as therapists, like I feel like sometimes parents come in with this expectation, and I want to meet those expectations. Like, yes, let's get your baby to this, milestone, but we really have to meet the baby where they're at and work from there, and not where we're expecting them to be. I think that is so important in just our expectations of how quickly things are going to move along and progress. They will get there. We just need to get them there at the right pace.
Yes, absolutely. And oftentimes, if they are older, it may happen at a quicker pace, because than it would from like birth to 3 months, then from 3 to 6 months, it may happen more rapidly because they're more excited and engaged with their atmosphere or whatever it may be. But, and then there was another question, but for some reason, shoot, I cannot scroll through them.
There, my 3-year-old scooted and never really crawled. Are there obvious deficits that I should be watching out for now? So what I would say in like the school age in terms of crawling, and what I always say, try to incorporate crawling through play. There's no reason not to crawl under chairs and crawl through tunnels and get all of that. I know, Mary as an OT would definitely say she sees a lot of that in the, coloring, writing endurance. So really working on that, coloring on vertical surfaces to really get that shoulder involved. I think that's really important. You could be, again, incorporating things like bear walking and crab walking, a lot of yoga. You can work on stabilizing and building that strength through the shoulders and all the arm and hand muscles in other ways. In terms of deficits, ability to sit upright for longer periods of time, if those postural muscles might be weak. Again, this isn't to scare anyone. A lot of, depth perception or visual motor can occur during crawling. And so if you notice those deficits, again, I don't want to say causation, not necessarily, but it's something to just keep in mind. And again, that arm strength, and how that translates into gross motor and fine motor activities at this age. Would you agree with that? I don't know if
Yeah,
I
absolutely. And one of my coworkers, she's a PTA, and she had this genius idea for kind of that age, that 3 to 5-year-old age, to incorporate crawling and the visual component that babies do. So she lines a hallway with Post-it notes, and you do it appropriate to that child's age, but like whether it be shapes or letters or numbers or animals or whatever, you draw these different things on the Post-its, and as they're crawling, you say, okay, I want you to find with your eyes, find the sheep or find the horse or whatever it may be. And so that then also engages, like all of the things you're talking about, that we want to be targeting to try to avoid, it engages that visual system as well, where they're turning their head and they're crawling. And then they're learning so much too. They're like processing at the same time, which is awesome. So I was just thinking that 3-year-old's mama.
Yeah.
Wants
I think those are really good tips. I see another thing. How can you work on extended arms and strengthening those muscles? My baby always falls and then goes into swimming. So I am going to plug both of our courses because I think that as much as we want to, you know, talk things through, I think sometimes those visuals are just so important so that you can see hands-on, you know, how we position a baby. Again, very simply. I know that ours is very simple to replicate, and I'm sure it sounds like yours is too. But sometimes that visual, being able to go back and watch it again and again, is really beneficial. So I am going to plug our courses for that. And Kaylee, you have else to add?
Yeah, no, I think that that's true in both of our pages, and just same thing, meet your baby where they're at. I see often with crawling, parents feel like they have to kind of skip some steps and force them into hands and knees, get them into that position, and then try to get them to crawl from there. Babies really learn an inch at a time. Just like if we were, you know, a runner. I am not a runner, but if I were a runner, I tried to be a runner.
I've tried to.
I'm just not. I can't do it. But you wouldn't expect yourself to go out and run a half marathon after just starting training. You would literally add on mile by mile, walk, running, doing all these different things. You would cross train if you knew what you were doing. So babies are the same way. So I think often we can get very like rigid and literalistic about some of the milestones and be like, okay, if I want them to do this, like I can only do this. And like you were saying earlier, that's where our clinical expertise comes in, because we see a skill and we know 15 different ways to promote that same skill, coming at it from all different angles. So yeah, I think the courses would be great, and both of our pages would provide insight as well.
I think also one of the mistakes that I've seen parents make, and it's so understandable, is that they'll move a toy further away from the baby in the hopes that it's just the motivation. But if your baby physically can't get there, it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
So I actually tell parents, keep the toys really close. We want baby to feel like they can reach, so that we start weight shifting, or that they can look. I mean, I always say stability before mobility. That's something that we say all the time, stability before mobility. Babies have to be able to stabilize in a 4-point position before they're going anywhere. Mm-hmm. So our courses definitely show you how to do that. I think that that's really where to start, because, you know, again, these are small things that I understand why parents think that, you know, oh, just push the toy out of the way, but you're not, you know, we're not going to get anywhere with that. So it's really backing it up a little bit, making sure baby has that foundational components, the foundational elements that are needed to get to the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Yeah, let's see.
This has been fun.
I love it.
I miss talking development.
I know, right? Like, I don't go to IEP meetings anymore. I've been out of that whole thing for a while, but I really enjoy chatting. It just also, like, it always makes me feel like I'm becoming a better therapist with every conversation, because you learn something from somebody else all the time.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty much everything I share, I can think of each person that I was either shadowing or in the gym at the same time as they were with kiddos. And I was like, oh, that's genius. You know, that is how we learn. None of our ideas are truly individual.
Yeah. And I see somebody here just wrote, or I don't know when it was, advocating for your child is never a failure. And that must have been also when we, you know, we're just talking about, you know, feeling like a failure. Advocating for your child is never a failure. I really like that. I feel like that become our own meme, right? Like we make a post around that.
I love it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, no, I think we got to most of the questions, if not all. Sorry, I feel like I just cut you off there because I was really excited about that comment.
No, you didn't at all. You didn't. I'm just struggling to even scroll. It won't let me scroll. I don't know if it's because I'm not running the live. But thank you guys so much to those of you who joined.
Thank you so much to everyone who joins. I know that, Kaylee, you're going to put this maybe on your YouTube channel. Is that true? You have a YouTube?
I'm gonna try. I am not YouTube savvy yet, but yeah, I wish I would have done that more with things in the past, these longer form videos, so that people can go back and search them and watch them at their own
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. Did we get any recommendations if baby doesn't seem interested in any of the toys you try to use? It seems like my baby won't follow any of the toys or objects I try. Okay, I think this will be the last question we answer quickly. I'm, I don't know about you, Kaylee. I know that Mary's very not into like light up toys, just for development vision purposes. And I have come on board with that, since I had babies and I didn't really know so much. It's crazy to think, like, I was just so early in my career. My oldest are 11 now. And I was in, just finished graduate school when I had them. I didn't really know anything. And so I was all about light up toys, like what, babies need to be entertained. So I'm much more on board with, really eliminating a lot of light up toys. However, I do find them very motivating for, when you're trying to get very specific goals accomplished. And I do use them in my sessions because I do find that babies will track them more. And when we're using them for a very goal oriented purpose, I do find that when I take out those toys that a baby's not used to and it's visually stimulating and it captures their attention, I do find that that's helpful. So if you can avoid those toys during regular playtime and really take out some of those light up toys for those purposeful goal oriented playtimes, I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm really big on limiting screen time as much as possible. But same thing, I will totally whip mom or dad's phone out in a session. I also am not against using food as a motivator. Pacifiers, food can literally be, sorry to get crude here, but like mom showing
Yep.
that she's going to nurse the baby
Totally
or
fine.
putting out a bottle, whatever it may be. Sometimes we have to really pull out all the stops, and just novelty in general. It sounds like this mom has tried some novel
Yeah.
items because she said objects, but like household objects can be really enticing. The remote, the dog, if it's safe, all of those things can be highly, highly motivating. And I always encourage parents to strip their baby down, to be naked, which can kind of just get them excited enough to try something new as well.
That's a good idea. So anyway, thank you all for joining us in this. And Kaylee, we got to do this again because I really,
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you for
this is a
having
lot
me.
of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll do this again and we'll be in touch.
Good night. See you later.
Good night. Take care, everybody.